The wind howled across the barren plains of Arizona as the sun dipped low behind the rust-colored cliffs, casting long shadows over the land. John Callahan, a rugged cowboy with a weathered face and eyes hardened by years of solitude, leaned on the wooden fence outside his barn. The land was quiet, too quiet even for this part of the West. He adjusted his hat, scanning the horizon for anything out of the ordinary. He hadn't seen another soul in over a week. That's why he was surprised when he saw something small moving in the distance, staggering toward his property. As the shape came into focus, he realized it was a child, skin and bones, barely clothed, sunburnt and exhausted. He ran out to meet the boy, who collapsed in his arms. Without a second thought, John carried him inside, gave him water, warmed up a pot of beans, and sat with him as the boy slowly came back to life. He didn't speak much, only a few words in a native tongue John didn't fully understand. But he got the message. The boy was alone, hungry, lost. And John, a man with no family of his own, felt something stirred deep in his chest. A protective instinct he thought he'd buried years ago after the war. He gave the boy a bed in the hayloft, covered him in a wool blanket, and checked on him throughout the night. In the quiet darkness, John sat by the fireplace, wondering what the child had been through, and what, or who, he might have left behind. Come morning, the child was gone. The bed was empty, the blanket neatly folded. John stepped outside, confused, his boots crunching softly on the dry earth. That's when he froze. In the early morning haze, stretching across his entire field, were warriors, mounted on proud horses. Silent, still. A sea of native warriors dressed in full ceremonial regalia, feathers rising high from their headdresses, faces painted with ancient symbols of strength, mourning, and gratitude. 200 of them, lined up facing the barn. Facing him, John didn't move. He didn't reach for the rifle resting just inside the barn door. He knew better. This wasn't an ambush. This was something else. His heart pounded like a war drum in his chest. The warriors parted slowly, and an elder rode forward. He was tall, regal, with silver hair braided down his back and eyes that had seen centuries of sunrises. The child from the night before stepped out from behind the elder's horse and walked toward John, eyes no longer hollow but full of something else. Pride, belonging. The elder raised his hand and spoke in calm, clear English. You fed our child when the world turned its back. You sheltered him with no promise of reward. You honored the old ways without knowing them. He paused, and the silence around them felt sacred. You have earned our respect and our protection. John swallowed hard, unsure of what to say. He simply nodded. And then, one by one, the warriors raised their fists to the sky in salute. A gesture of honor. Then they turned, silent as shadows, and disappeared over the ridge like a passing storm. The boy stayed behind, watching them go, and then turned to John with a smile. From that day on, the boy, Taka they called him, became like a son to him. And John, once a lone cowboy with nothing but a worn saddle and empty land, became a bridge between worlds. The people of the nearby town whispered legends of the day 200 warriors rode silently through the valley and stood outside a cowboy's barn, not to take life, but to honor it. They said the spirits of the land had watched and approved. Years later, folks still rode by John's ranch and slowed down, hoping to catch a glimpse of the boy who had become a man, or the old cowboy who once faced down an army without lifting a gun. But those who truly knew the story understood. It wasn't about bravery or fear. It was about kindness, a single act of compassion that rippled through generations. So if you ever find yourself walking a lonely trail, remember this. Sometimes the smallest act of humanity echoes the loudest. And in a world divided by lines, borders, and scars, it's still possible to be remembered not for what you fought against, but for who you stood up for.